MNS Attorneys, it's a Joburg-based law firm, has been lauded, in fact, or applauded for its contribution to the State Capture Commission. That firm, which provided services to railway agency Transnet, conducted a forensic investigation into Transnet misuse of funds. In fact, their findings were heard at the Zondo Commission. And for more on the kind of work that went into their contribution, let's speak to MNS Attorney founder Tshiamo Sedumedi, who joins us now via our video link. And it's great to have you on the program, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time. The kind of investigation you had to enter into, did you have a sense of the scale of the kind of work you need to be doing from the beginning?
Good afternoon, sir. I must admit, at the beginning, when we got instruction, we were not quite sure of the magnitude of the issue that we were supposed to deal with. But once we're in, we have been about a whole host that we never did anticipate.
Yeah, and apologies to our viewers, it seems like our connection to you is not the best, but hopefully it'll clear up. Help us understand what you had to consider in the lead-up to conducting this forensic investigation, especially in a context where you said you were also surprised by the scale of it as you went on with the probe.
I didn't get that part. I think your line was a little bit bad.
Yeah.
It's better now.
All right. I was just saying, can you help us gauge the considerations you had to make in actually approaching the investigation itself, in a context where even you weren't aware of the scale of the probe itself?
Yes, as I said earlier on, obviously when one got into the matter, we thought it was just one of those minor investigations, because I think we're not quite aware of the magnitude, even though it was quite a widely published transaction. So as soon as we got into the matter, we really had to amass all the resources within the firm and dedicate time to ensure that we really could give it our best shot, because I think at that point we had not done actually much of the investigations in the country. So this was one of those where we had to really marshal all the resources and take a position that whatever outcome, we are going to give it our best shot and apply the best legal principles that we are aware of. Yeah,
in fact, the chair of the Zondo Commission, Raymond Zondo, saying that, he did have to rely in part in your own findings from that investigation in compiling his report. For those who've missed the details around what you have found, give us a snapshot of perhaps the key findings that you had made. For instance, I can see there were 95 locomotive acquisitions that you find were irregular, irregularities also in 100 locomotives, and several other details.
Correct. Funny enough, when the matter began, the focus was only on a 1064. But what we are not aware of, and I think that's what the country was also not aware of, was that the 95 acquisition was actually a Trojan horse, which was used to create an empire for the Chinese company CSR. Because in 95 locomotives, as an example, CSR did not have any footprint in the country. So Transnet officials had to bend the rules on the RFP to ensure that they qualify, even though on the RFP itself, CSR was supposed to have been disqualified at the very beginning. But because obviously this was part of the grand plan, because there were improper engagements between Transnet and CSR, which as well Judge Zondo found that indeed these engagements during an RFP process were quite improper and irregular. So that's how CSR, Chinese South Rail, got entry into the Transnet market. That was part one.
Right. Please continue.
95. So when you thought that was just one isolated incident, then came another transaction, the acquisition of 100 locomotives. Lo and behold, even on that one as well, despite there being a business case to appoint another service provider, they changed the business case to suit CSR. In actual fact, even on this specific one of 100 locomotives, CSR did not even comply with the requirements stipulated in the Transnet RFP. So second time around again, yes, Transnet officials bending the rules to ensure that CSR gets into and further business with Transnet. This was obviously now laying the base for the bigger transaction being 1064.
Part of what, I'm not sure if our video link has frozen to Tshiamo, hopefully not. Part of what I'm wondering, Tshiamo, if you can still hear us, is how closely aligned your recommendations in your forensic investigations were to what the Zondo inquiry ultimately recommended.
It is quite interesting, and you state that indeed when you the findings by Judge Zondo, they mirror almost all that we made. That is quite something that was at the beginning when very, very negative towards our findings. I think even officials they just driving our investigation. So it was quite encouraging sign and a validation of our findings when Judge Zondo, when you look at the report, almost all aspects of 95, 100, and 1064, he found that our investigations were spot on.
Yeah.
So that was quite an encouraging validation of the good work that we did for Transnet.
Right. And of course, what we've come to learn is that the skullduggery took place at various other places, not just Transnet. From the investigations that you conducted, do you reckon there is scope to, I guess, follow leads that move you beyond what was taking place at Transnet?
Definitely there is, because surely Transnet was not only an isolated incident, there was obviously a targeted scheme for all the other SOEs, even though our scope was only limited to Transnet and also only to the locomotives. But clearly, once you read the report by Judge Zondo, it is clear that this was just a grand-scale mechanism to target key SOEs, and Transnet was just but one of them. Even though I think at Transnet that was one of the biggest procurement that was actually targeted by these enterprises.
Speak to us about, in the past, individuals who've contributed greatly to the Zondo Commission of Inquiry in one way or the other, whether by speaking as a witness, by speaking as a whistleblower. Those individuals have, let's say, come under threat in one way or the other. How worried were you as MNS attorneys to be so easily identifiable as one of the people that is lifting the lid on the corruption that took place at one of the country's SOEs?
That comes to the I think what we are here about, our chairman of the committee is very, very clear. But we need to stick to the law. Whether at the end somebody is going to be here or found wanting, let those come and contest our report based on what the law is. That in a way helpful in terms of keeping us that irrespective of outcome, as long as we are clear on the law, anybody can come and challenge our findings. But so far, even when they went to the commission to testify, Mr. Gamas, Brian Molef, they were unable to rebut the legal findings that we made. So that, in a way, gave us confidence that irrespective of the consequence, at least we knew that we were on the right side of the law. Unlike we just made spurious allegations against individuals. I think that's where sometimes one gets worried. But on this one, we are quite clear that this is what the law is. Let's judge the conduct of the officials against the law. And once we are on the clear side of the law, then we are quite comfortable about the matter and not be fearful of what happens subsequent to that.
Yeah. So to be clear, and this is out of personal interest, you've never had any kind of threats to MNS attorneys or any of some of the, I guess, prominent officials who work within your company?
So far, as a family, we are able to get it as findings. As you know, I say there and there, you know where they come from, but they're not expensive like other victims. I mean, one knows of the strength that we tell some of the issues, but on our side, as much as they were ways that were sent to us, calls, anonymous calls, putting our credentials, we are quite clear that if you've got any doubt about our findings, then contest them in a public.
Apologies to our viewers, there wasn't the greatest line, but I'm hoping we were able to capture at least the sentiment of what Tshiamo was explaining to us. I'm going to have to leave it there, sadly. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Tshiamo Sedumedi is the founder of MNS Attorneys. They were among several firms that made, I guess, dare I say, important findings in their own independent forensic investigations, findings that the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo admitted he used in his own deliberations and his recommendations.